So just to go over the basics of this again, this is, I think most people are familiar with Quogue Wildlife Refuge. It's in the village of Quogue and the town of Southampton, and also as Jacobson mentioned, in the Southampton Waterfowl Association is an owner. So this is on 3 Old Country Road in Quogue, and the applicant submitted a compelling public need, a hardship waiver for the development of 1,000 square foot expansion on the rear of the existing 3,150 square foot nature center that was built in the 1970s, and construction of a 1,980 square foot storage building for refuge maintenance. The hardship waiver explains that the activity has increased at the refuge. The refuge is 300 acres, and I'm sorry, but just to back up, the activity is occurring in the southerly portion. I'll show you a picture of the area. So this is an aerial. It's hard to see exactly where the refuge is, but it's on the south side of the pond. I mean, the nature center on the south side of the pond. And then the storage building is going a little bit to the east of that parking lot, where there is existing storage, temporary storage, outdoor storage of kayaks and other equipment. So again, their activity has increased significantly at the refuge, and so have their program offerings to the public, to scouts and other groups. And they have, again, passive and slightly active recreational uses there, or offerings, kayaking, cross-country skiing, environmental education camps, badge programs for scouting groups, and other nature-related environmental education programs. So the expansion on the nature center would accommodate the refuge's increased program activities for staff and meeting space and group gatherings. The storage building replaces, again, temporary structures, open structures, a small barn that was built in the 1940s. This new structure would consolidate all of that outdoor storage into one new building. And they've provided a rendering of what the building would look like. I think like about this. And so the site, it's important to note that it is in, I won't go through the history, long history of the refuge, and its origins in the 1930s, and used for ice harvesting in the old ice pond. But the site is, again, in 2 municipalities, in the village of Quogue and the town of Southampton. And that is important because the compelling public need hardship criteria speaks to an application serving more than one municipalities for the public health and safety. And that no better alternatives exist in the county for a use like this. And obviously the refuge can't be moved. This is where the refuge is located and where they need to have their facilities. So we have, I'm just going to skip to the end, and we have some questions about the upgrades and the proposal. If a while back, the refuge, about a year ago, came to the commission and asked for an upgrade to their sanitary system to the new alternative treatment system. And we wanted to get the status on that. Also, if the applicant can speak to whether there's a bathroom, a restroom in the expansion of the nature center, and if they have explored an alternative of a second floor rather than the expansion on the rear of the building. And also we will need them to submit owner's consent forms from the different owners of the property. And I think that's all I have, unless the commission has specific questions.
Julie, I don't know if you can pointed out, but this is in core preservation area, but in terms of where it switches from core to either CGA or outside of the Pine Barrens, the location of the infrastructure that's being proposed is right on the edge of that core area, I believe. And on the other side of the street is outside of the Pine Barrens entirely.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, and to the east is east of the refuge is compatible growth area in Southampton town and in the village of Quogue. This Old Country Road area is an industrial type of corridor, but north of Old Country Road in the town portion of the CGA is a residential. But yes, this is on the border of the core and the whole Pine Barrens for this area.
Just one more thing. This application is for a hardship waiver. I'm recalling that we had a deck application at this property a couple of years ago and determined it was exempt as a scouting project. And in your description, you described the number of the events that they do related to scouting in particular. So is that, I guess we still can make the determination whether this, though they've applied for the hardship waiver, whether it is indeed scouting or whether it requires this hardship waiver, and then act accordingly, correct?
Yes, I think there was consensus that the applicant had to apply for a hardship. The deck was a different matter, but the uses of the expansion of the nature center and the storage facility, I'm not sure if you could tie them directly to just scouts, you know, or there are other groups hosted at this property. There's other uses. That actual space for the deck may have been often used by scouts. That I don't want to get it, and I don't have the particulars of the deck, but you're correct. There was a deck approved, an outdoor deck about 800 square feet on the side of the nature center a few years ago.
Maybe I could just ask John to answer that question.
Okay.
So, John, if we, through the testimony today, upon further information, come to a different conclusion and believe that it is a scouting type of activity, we're not precluded from going that direction as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But the application has two pieces, as Julie described. One is the addition to the visitor center, and then the other is that maintenance structure.
Right, and so they could be parsed out, but it's possible that they could be exempt, but also meet the criteria for hardship exemption. And then it's really up to the commission to decide which is the correct avenue to pursue it. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And
You should hear from
John,
the
wasn't
applicant.
there also
The public.
a resolution previously passed by the commission stating that this would require a hardship application?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. I believe we had several conversations with Quogue, their counsel. Some of those were at the meeting, some of them were through teleconference, and they came to the point where they realized they needed to submit an application. Now, if the commission, after today's hearing, determines that this is truly a non-development, type of activity, it can make that determination based on the evidence produced at the hearing.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions for Julie? I guess we'll hear from the applicant now. Angie, can you, oh, thank you. Mr. Nelson?
I'll
Hello.
swear him virtually in.
Dominica?
Yep.
Okay.
Right there.
I don't see him. Where is he?
He's
It's
Nope.
got the hat.
Wildlife Refuge.
I see Mike Nelson is here.
Oh, okay, I see him. Okay. Will you please raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Can I have your name, please?
Michael Nelson?
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Nelson, if you could provide, if you want to provide an overview from the project from your perspective and your application.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you, Julie, for proposing the project or explaining the project at the Wildlife Refuge. Quickly to answer some of the questions that you had, the septic that was agreed to, the septic updates that was agreed to, I believe it was at the December meeting in 2021, have not been started. We're waiting on the process of this application in hopes to do them both at the same time. There is currently a bathroom in the Nature Center building, and the expansion, the proposed 1,000-foot footprint expansion does not include adding to or modifying, that bathroom facility that we have. I'm not quite sure what the other questions that you had were.
An alternative for a second floor was asked about.
An alternative was researched, but due to us being a public facility and the need of additional exhibit and center space available to the public, creating a second story would just was not feasible based on staircase or elevators and for the type of addition that we were looking to do. So the project was proposed originally for last December as a determination. We do host a fair amount of educational programs or recreation programs. In fact, over 400 recreation and educational programs every year. About 25% of those are scouting activities, and our educators are all merit badge certified in order to teach those scouting activities. One thing that we did with the proposal of the core, the hardship application, is we did reduce the size of the storage facility that we were originally proposed. And that was due to trying to the least amount of disturbance to the area. We reduced the size from 2,700 square feet that we originally proposed to 1,980 square feet. And that would eliminate the need to remove any trees in that area. Other than that, the project does remain the same as proposed. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
In your application, you discuss how you feel this project meets the elements of compelling public need. Could you go over that information?
Well, with the continued use of the Nature Center, basically after with social media and then with the start of the pandemic, the refuge has the use of the refuge has increased tremendously. So just the fact that folks, we are open every day of the year for folks to come in and visit and to explore the trails. And, as far as a compelling public need, I mean, that was one of the biggest things for a relief for members in the community during the pandemic, is to be able to get outside and explore the trails. Without the ability to house our equipment to maintain the 300 acres of the refuge property, that's the main reason for the storage facility that we're looking to do, is to maintain the equipment that we use to maintain the 300 acres, the 7 miles of hiking trails. The Nature Center building, we were closed during the pandemic, but we have been opened up now on the weekends and allowing folks to come in, and just the use itself has increased tremendously. We have they're called people counters. Folks, when people come across through the gates at the Nature Center, it tracks how many people come in and how many people leave, and just the amount of public over the last 3 years have increased tremendously, more than doubled, actually. So.
Michael, based on that increase in activity, this is basically the minimum needed to accommodate the increased use and activity there?
It is the minimum needed. Going back to or a health and safety issue, as far as the space in the Nature Center, we have outgrown the Nature Center, the office space. Nature Center was built in 1970. Back then, there was 1 or 2, staff members here at the Wildlife Refuge. We now have 7 full-time staff, and in the summertime, that increases to 14 and 16 staff. And right now we have 6 staff working out of about a 11 by 14 office space, which is, we've actually split out across the Nature Center because of the pandemic, but that would be a health and safety issue, as well as a compelling public need for our staff to be safe during this and have the building open to the public.
And you've cited these improvements as part of the main building, but as far from the most sensitive area, the water, as possible, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, the extension on the Nature Center is basically to the southeast side of the Nature Center, as far from the pond, from the wetlands as possible, and to also do the least amount of disturbance, to the surrounding area.
Can I ask you on the question of scouting? I've been trying to understand this better. And you said, I think, like 25% of what you do is related to scouting, but there you meant, I believe, scouting in terms of the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts as an organization, not the broader definition of scouting, which is sort of outdoor environmental education, trail exploration. So the rest of the public and school children that use the facility are engaged in activities that are largely similar to what you do with the Scouts there. Is that correct?
Exactly. We do offer, merit badge programs for scouting. We work with Scouts consistently on Eagle Scout projects, at least 2 or 3 a year. Boy Scouts would do their Eagle Scout project at the facility, but a lot of the merit badge programs or the public school programs can intermix, and we teach a lot of the same things during those programs.
Right. So it's a question I'll later ask council, but that exemption for scouting, it's hard for me to believe it was structured only for one particular organization. but more of the activity of scouting. But it sounds like it's simple. The basic things that you do at this center have to do with learning about the environment or rehabilitation of injured wildlife, stewardship of the environment, that kind of thing.
Exactly, and falls in line greatly with the scouting,
Okay.
Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and Eagle Scout, mentality or programming.
And then the other area of construction, which is where you store your maintenance equipment, that also is the minimum needed. And what the current structure is pretty dilapidated, right? So you're replacing it and enlarging it.
That is correct. There's currently a barn there that is a small barn that is was built, before the 1950s, and as well as temporary tarp structures that we put up to cover some of the maintenance equipment. Those have outlived their lifespan, and the goal would be to remove the barn and create one structure that we can house all of our equipment in order to maintain the facilities, and also from storage. Some of our program storage that we currently have in the Nature Center building here for seasonal programs like our Halloween events, we can store out in the outdoor structure.
And is there that area is already cleared, correct?
It is also already being used as a work facility. We get wood chips delivered to spread on the trails. We have a tractor and a machine, to spread the trails out and to mow. So it is already being used. It already is clear. When we do trimming of the trails, we remove the brush so it doesn't become a fire hazard. And there's a brush pile in that current area there as well. So
Okay,
that's
thank
what we
you. I have no further questions at this point.
Do any of the other commission members or reps have questions?
Can I make a motion to close the public hearing?
Well, we have to, I'm sorry, Supervisor Romaine, we need to get, open this to the public. If anybody from the public would like to speak, to please raise your hand.
Mayor,
Mayor Sartorius, Quag.
Mayor Sartorius?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
We're,
I'm sorry, my apologies, Dick. Mayor Sartorius had his hand raised first. We will get to you absolutely next. Mayor Sartorius?
Yes, thank you for having the public hearing. I just want to emphasize what a great organization the Quag Wildlife Refuge is, and the leadership, Mike Nelson and Marissa, as the associate director, how good they are in running that place. And I probably drive by there a couple of times a week, and I can say absolutely in the last couple of years that the usage of the Quag Wildlife Refuge has gone up exponentially. And the need for these facilities, I've toured it, I've looked at what they do, and that all the trails are great places for people to go out and walk. They're all cleared, and those trails don't clear themselves, and they've got to have equipment to do it, and they've got to have a place to store the equipment in order to make sure that it stays in good condition. So the Village of Quag is 100% behind this application and 100% behind the refuge and its management. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Dick Amper?
Yes, I just wanted to jump in here. The Pine Barrens Society was asked to go out to visit the Quogue Wildlife Refuge in terms of its utility and its appropriateness for protecting water and land. And we found that that was highly supportable. What we had a problem with and expressed the concern about was that this be connected in some way or other as a scout requirement, because that changes a whole lot of other rules and regulations for other people. Right now, these people can, on the basis of the things that we agreed to, were able to make the facility available to the public as a whole, and to specifically point out, as the management there did, and specifically said, we don't need this to be considered strictly as a scouting thing or principally as a scouting thing. It's a question of how it works as an environmental thing. And they indicated to us that that is the position that they would take. So I can see no reason at all to put a label on this that puts us in the business of having to sort out what constitutes Boy Scouts and what doesn't constitute Boy Scouts, and leave that out of the factors using the Quogue Wildlife Refuge's function and desire and goal for public support that we can all be behind. I wouldn't want to compromise that in any way by saying, if you don't make this principally or in a significant way scouting, then that changes the entire balancing, and we find ourselves in a place we would prefer not to be. So I'm sorry if there's any way that the supervisor can understand that it is actually desirable to make it clear that this is for so many different uses, so many great sources of, well, science in the first place, but entertainment. It's got a tremendous facility. They have made it clear to us that it is not essential that this be labeled a Schneiderman. It is not, they're not linked, and they should not be linked, and we don't want them to be linked because we don't want to go where we were not going to go. So I come back to the chair of the department, and if you can reinforce the fact that this is not essential to the capacity that you're seeking, and that it would be better if we didn't put it into a category that's going to put us in a different category.
Can I ask a question real quick to Mr. Amper? Dick, just out of curiosity, because I do appreciate that you went out to the site and took a look and are familiar with the operation there. So does the Pine Barrens Society feel that the project as proposed meets the criteria for the hardship exemption?
I think in the absence of the concern that it has to be a percentage of scouting, I just don't think it's necessary, Jay. And I thought had worked that out. And these folks, by the way, are in a difficult situation, saying there are so many things that need to be done, and let's get this right and get this approved. If we can all accomplish that, we would be wrong not to. But we were quite clear, both before going out to tour the refuge and during the period of time we spent exploring it, it became clear to us that this could be done on the basis of its open space strengths, but it could not be done as a minimum requirement for scouting. No problem with scouting, but we don't want to link the construction of other things that are not related or don't have to be related. And more than anything else, I just wouldn't want to see something as important as this project compromised after having agreed on the part of the wildlife refuge and everyone else. Let's not have an issue where we don't have to have one. We've made it clear what we can support, and that will benefit the public, and we shouldn't compromise that. So if there's any way we can not link these particular things, we're all working together.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And I've shared sort of a similar concern about precedential value, setting precedent here. So if you feel that it meets the criteria of the hardship exemption because of the compelling public need, then I don't have an issue with that.
That's terrific, Jay. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak?
If not, I make a motion to close this public hearing.
I'll second it.
Okay. So, and John, if you can guide me on this a little bit. So we
Sure.
want to close the public hearing and leave the record open for 10 days to receive comment?
Is there, yeah, that typically the commission would close a hearing and then we would have a period of some number of days so people could submit written comment. If that's if you want to maintain that pattern, we could keep the public comment period open until next Friday.
So let me amend my resolution.
It's up, that way, anyone that wants to submit any additional information, they can, and the commission staff could consider that.
Make a motion, close the public hearing and keep it open for 10 days. For public comment, written public comment.
Supervisor Romaine. Is there a second? Was there a second?
Yes.
Supervisor
Yeah.
Aguirre.
And to Supervisor Schneider, we could always have, if necessary, a special meeting, which I think will be discussed under the next public hearing.
And I just counted to 10, and that puts us on a weekend. So if we want, maybe we would have the public comment period end on the 28th, which is a week from this Friday. If that's agreeable with everyone. And then because it's a Friday, I don't know if you want to have the public comment period closed at noon, standard time, hour time, prevailing time. That would give everyone a chance to get their comments in, and then the commission staff would start reviewing them. And if there are no comments, there are no comments.
I'm fine with that. So Ed, you want to just amend it to the 9 days ending at noon?
9 days, closing at 12 noon on the 28th of January.
The second was by Supervisor Aguirre.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Okay. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, on to the next public hearing. Sorry, I have to switch papers here. All right, so this is the second public hearing. I will read the notice for notice of public hearing pursuant to New York State Environmental Conservation Law, Article 570123, parens 2. Notice is hereby given that the Central Pine Barrens Joint Planning and Policy Commission will hold a public hearing on January 19th, 2022 on the matter of an application for a development of regional significance. The name of the project is RD Industrial Compatible Growth Area Hardship Waiver and Development of Regional Significance Application. The applicant, the owner is AVR-SP Brookhaven JV LLC. The applicant's representatives are Timothy Shea Jr., Sterling Ballin, and Charles J. Voorhees, Nelson Pulper Voorhees. The project site is Suffolk County tax map numbers 200-554-3-4.41, 4.45, and 4.46. The location is Ramsey Road and Precision Drive in Yaphank in the town of Brookhaven, Suffolk County. The project description, the applicant proposes development of a 3-lot commercial industrial subdivision and a site plan to construct 505,000, it's late, I'm sorry, 300 square feet of industrial buildings and associated infrastructure on a 47.26 acre project site. On December 6, 2021, the Brookhaven Town Planning Board issued a neg deck for this type 1 action pursuant to the regulations of the State Environmental Quality Review Act. If the commission members could then could please identify themselves for the record, starting with Brookhaven.
Brookhaven Town Supervisor Ed Romaine, joined by Special Counsel Emily Pons.
Okay. Town of Riverhead,
Better Aguirre Supervisor and Deputy Town Attorney McCormick.
Town of Southampton,
Southampton Town Supervisor Jay Schneiderman, joined by Janice Shearer, Land Planning and Development Administrator, and our Environmental Analyst, Marty Shea.
okay. Suffolk County,
I don't know if it just leaves me, Andy Freeling, Chief Planner, Suffolk County Department of Economic Development and Planning.
I was on mute. Sorry about that. I was on mute.
okay. thank you,
Dorian Dale, Director of Planning, Suffolk County, representing the county executive, along with my colleagues, Andy Freeling, who's already pronounced himself, and Sarah Lansdale, who's Director of Planning.
Thank you. I'd like to start off with having our commission staff provide an overview of the project. That would be Julie Hargrave, our Policy and Planning Manager. Julie?
Thank you. Good afternoon again. So I think you have an idea of the project, but I'll just go through some of the specifics. This again is in the compatible growth area. It's a development of regional significance. It is a 47.26 acre site. It's mostly wooded except for about 3.3 acres where there's a developed road and some prior disturbance. The proposal is to reconfigure 3 lots, so be re-subdivision and build a site plan of commercial industrial development, 505,300 square feet, about 11 acres of buildings, and about 20 acres will be cleared for other uses, including parking lots, roads, driveways. The site is in an industrial subdivision that was planned in the 1980s. There was a generic environmental impact statement done at that time. Each site subsequently has to undergo its own seeker review and go through the seeker process. Also, lots in the subdivision have been further subdivided since the project was originally planned. And again, the town adopted a negative declaration for the as a seeker determination on December 6th. The uses, just to go back, the uses in the industrial park include commercial offices, manufacturing, warehouses, hotel. There was a hotel zone change at one time. That didn't go through. There's projects underway, a surf park, and other developments. Not every property in this subdivision, industrial subdivision, has been developed yet, but they're moving along. And again, this is for 2 warehouses and 1 mini storage. The mini storage would be 3 stories. I can show you a picture of the site just so we have it. Let me just share my screen. I apologize. I'll do that in a minute. So you have the staff report and explains the background and the proposed site plan. Again, this is a development of regional significance, and it has to conform to the standards and guidelines of the land use plan that's outlined in Chapter 5 of the Pine Barrens Land Use Plan. And there's a specific application an applicant has to make for development of regional significance. The commission hasn't had that many of these. There's been several in the record. Those are explained in the staff report, and also describe in the staff report the area. Let me just again get the use. Let me get the map up so everyone can see where this is. This is at the eastern end of the Brookhaven R&D Plaza, south of the LIE, west of North Street, north of the railroad tracks. Again, it's about 3 lots that have been assembled to 47 acres. To the south is residential, north of the highways B&L, Northwest of this site is the Meadows at Yaphank, the 320 acre, also a development of regional significance. Again, this area is zoned industrial, zoned for industrial development. And the staff report goes through all of the standards and guidelines. I won't go through all of them. Unless you have specific questions. There are some questions on items that we need more information, including the clearing. We wanted to confirm that the cleared area of the road and the other prior disturbance has been included in the clearing limit. That's standard calculation that we always confirm to ensure that the clearing limit is being met. And unfragmented open space. The site is here. This is generally the site plan. I want to say the applicant did submit an amended site plan. It's very similar to this site plan that was in the package, but that was in the application submitted in November. But additional information was submitted on January 14th, last Friday, to tighten up some of this. But generally, as you can see, this site plan fragments the open space. There's patches of open space all around. There's 1 acre, 5 acres, 9 acres. It's very patchy. The open space will be about 16 acres to come out of this. And if that was in a block that was more unfragmented, it could be at the eastern end of this site, could be at the western end, maybe that would be less efficient. If this could be more clustered to the west side of this site, maybe the largest building on the east side could be flipped 90 degrees to cluster this more toward the road, not have as many buffers that really don't constitute quality open space and are less meaningful. They will be degraded over time. They don't provide a significant habitat value, though there's many factors of why unfragmented open space is important and why this needs to be clustered more. And this is just not meeting the intent of this standard right now, but that's really for the commission to discuss. And maybe the applicant can explain some of the constraints or the purpose of why it was laid out this way, and if they could look at an alternative that is more conforming to the standard. There's no cultural resources impact. The State Historic Preservation Office said there was no resources identified there. And so we have some questions at the end of the staff report, again, just to confirm the clearing limits to make sure that the conformance is demonstrated there. And again, if it's found to be that it doesn't conform, a hardship waiver may be necessary. The plan will need to be, show all the clearing limits. We're looking for a more clustered plan to reduce the fragmented open space. And also show if there are any impacts to steep slopes. I think it was about less than 2 acres of steep slopes shown, and we want to make sure that those are protected in conformance with the standards and guidelines that relate to steep slopes. Landscaping plans eventually will need to be reviewed, at least by the town, for conformance to have native plantings. And any plans for signage that could be visible from the LIE. This is a scenic corridor in this area, and the proposed road goes right up against the buffer to the LIE, or right up against the right of way. So it doesn't look like there's much of a buffer left. And I'm not sure what will be visible and what won't. We don't have a visual simulation of how this will look from that highway. And yeah, definitely signage. If there's going to be any signage sticking out above the tree line where that's visible for this site from the highway. The 3-story mini storage may be visible. I'm not sure. That information I don't think was provided. We wanted to ask if there was going to be a new curb cut or a service road on the LIE for access to this site. We understand there's been discussions about this proposed road through the site being used as a public road, really, for people to eventually travel to the east for a new Yaphank Railroad station. So we want to make sure that it's clear on how this road will be accessed and visible again from the highway. And there is a concern about the northern long-eared bat. From our understanding, this is important and significant bat habitat, and that is a threatened species and endangered federally and statewide. So we wanted to understand how this is going to move forward, or if a take permit was going to be requested. There was discussion in the application about the build out capacity being about 3 more acres. And if that's going up or out, if that's eventually planned either as a second story somewhere or an expansion. Obviously, an horizontal expansion could impact the clearing limit, so maybe not horizontally, but if there is a future build out that may be proposed, we want to be clear on that now. And there is only one road out of this site, of this whole industrial park, one lane actually for 238 acres of development. And if this is going to generate a lot of traffic, which the environmental assessment form did explain that it would be a significant traffic trips would occur. If there's been a traffic study done, obviously the commission would need to review that. And if not, how does this application plan to handle the significant traffic associated with this project? And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Does any of the commission members or reps have questions for Julie?
Well, I do. There's only one road that if I'm at this location, I can leave and get back. So that one road leads to William Floyd Parkway. There's no other road leading to any other way to access this industrial park. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's
There
not
is an
correct.
entrance
That is
into
not
the,
correct.
what?
That is not correct. There is a road that leads to the service road of the Long Island Expressway that I can leave this development and go that way. So
You
I just,
can't leave though. You can't leave there. You're correct that it is coming into the site, but that's not an exit. You're not allowed to go out that exit. It's an entrance. I'm pretty certain if someone can, if maybe the, if you were a supervisor,
can-
so I don't want to misspeak, but I believe I checked that. It's an exit from the north. It's an exit from the service road, but you cannot leave this development and exit onto that service road to get on the LIE or to get on William Floyd Parkway. There's one exit onto William Floyd Parkway, is my understanding from this development. Is there anyone that can confirm that?
Well, can we,
That can be something the applicant can address.
right, let's finish up with if anybody has further questions, and then we'll get clarifications from the applicant. Does anyone else have any other questions for Julie at this point? Okay. So we will now turn to the applicant's representatives. I see Mr. Shea and Mr. Voorhees are present. Could we please unmute? I guess who wants to go first? Chick, do you want to go first, or Mr. Shea?
I'll go first if you don't mind, and then I'll hand the baton off to Mr. Voorhees.
Also, Judy, if possible, I would like to share a screen when I speak and would need to be enabled.
Okay. Angie, can you do that for me? I can't access that.
Got it.
Okay, thank you.
That's got it. Thank you.
Okay, if I may, I'll start. J. Timothy Shea Jr., Tillman Ballin, 100 Motor Parkway, Hauppauge, New York, for the applicant. I am joined on this Zoom presentation by Chick Voorhees of Nelson Pope and Voorhees, Brian Ferrigari of AVR SPJV, the applicant, and Jeff Volmuth of Volmuth and Brush. It is planned that Mr. Voorhees and I will do the presentation. The project before the Pine Barrens Commission has been determined to be a development of regional significance, thus requiring a hearing and commission approval. Although Mr. Voorhees will be doing the bulk of the presentation of our application to the commission, I wanted to provide some background with regard to how it is we arrived at the site design and our request for commission approval. The site in question is located on the southwest corner of Ramsey Road and Precision Drive in what was previously known as the map of Brookhaven R&D Plaza, Section 2. Site in question is 47.26 acres in size and was the subject of a filed map known as R&D Plaza in the 1980s, which included a public road ending in a cul-de-sac in the middle of the site, together with the proposed recharge basin going north and south. The map created two separate lots, one in the northwest corner of the site and a second lot encompassing the southern and eastern parts of the overall site. The lots were separated by the road and the recharge basin, thus creating those two separate lots. Based upon our investigation in the 1980s, construction of the road and recharge basin was commenced but never completed. AVR and its joint venture partner submitted a site plan application to the town of Brookhaven in order to develop the property as indicated in the site plan, which was initially filed with the Pine Barrens Commission on or about November 4th, 2021. Subsequent to that filing, the town of Brookhaven Planning Board approved the initial application as designed. In the interim, the applicant had occasion to speak with Pine Barrens staff, where staff raised concerns about designs of the project. In response to some of those concerns, the applicant modified the site plan, increasing the size of the largest blocks of open space to be retained on site, in part dealing with the fragmentation argument that was previously discussed. These modifications were discussed with staff and detailed in our letter dated January 14th, 2022. The modified plan was approved by the town of Brookhaven Planning Board on January 8th, 2022, and is the application in front of the commission that we seek to gain approval of. As indicated with our supplemental application documents and revisions to our application, the changes to the plan do not result in changes to location of the buildings and are limited to adding a truck turning lane to access building A in order to avoid a potential traffic conflict with people entering the site as employees, and which is located closest to Ramsey Road. Omission of a sewer line through the area in front of building A, which is the building adjacent to Ramsey Road. And reduction of truck driving aisles behind buildings A and C. A and C are the two buildings to the south, the one building that is going north and south along Ramsey Road, and the other being the 250,000 square foot building going east and west along the southern part of the proposed private road. Okay, we reduced those two drive aisles from 75 feet in the rear to 60 feet in order to provide additional open space and result any fragmentation and alleviate any fragmentation. As the commission is well aware, the site plans are not created in a vacuum and are subject to review by the town of Brookhaven Planning Department, the various agencies under the town's umbrella, and in this case, the Suffolk County Planning Commission, Suffolk County Department of Health Services. In arriving at an acceptable site plan, the applicant must, to the extent practicable, live within the constraints of the town code. Additionally, the applicants must meet with staff to determine preferred design parameters on any site. In this case, two code provisions and conversations with planning staff were major driving forces in arriving at a site plan design for this site. First, the town code has a land development standard, including one standard that for parcels over 5 acres in size, that a setback requirement is there for improvements, that bars or improvements within 100 feet of the street frontage. This had to do with the street frontage along Ramsey Road, which is the building in the going north and south right along Ramsey Road. The town has in certain cases been willing to relax such a requirement on smaller lots, but regularly requires the 100-foot yard buffer and setback for larger parcels of property. In this case, the 47.26 acre parcel with significant street frontage on Ramsey resulted in the town requiring us to adhere to the 100-foot setback for parking facilities and other improvements, and creation of the 100-foot vegetated buffer along Ramsey Road pursuant to 85-855 of the town code. The second major concern the town raised was the proximity of the project to development areas that are residentially zoned to the south of the subject parcel, just south of the Long Island Railroad tracks, which abut our property and which are also zoned residential. All Long Island Railroad tracks that I'm aware of in Suffolk County are zoned residential. Pursuant to our discussions with planning staff and in compliance with town land development standards, the planning department required us to adhere to a 75-foot buffer to any residential use or zone from any commercial or industrial use occupying greater than 5 acres. This is pursuant to 85-843B2C of the town code. In fact, our initial design had the private road accessing the site along the southerly boundary of the property. And it was somehow rejected by the town planning staff as not providing the required required buffer to residentially zoned property to the south. Thus, in order to adhere to the wishes of the town, we were required to provide both a 100-foot buffer along the frontage on Ramsey Road, as well as a 75-foot buffer along the southerly boundary line, leading us to utilize the majority of the whole previous map and somewhat cleared right-of-way with the cul-de-sac down the middle of the property for the development. If you can take a look at the, since you have control, can you show the plan very briefly? Okay, so right there on the site plan, you can see along the middle of the property, and you can see it coming to a head in a cul-de-sac within the proposed largest building. And that's what we are utilizing for the clearing and going for access, getting into the site. The other driving factor in the site design is the fact that the Long Island Railroad and MTA have discussed relocating the Yaphank Railroad Station, and that one of the sites under consideration is located to the east of the subject site. That lot is essentially landlocked by virtue of the fact that it is triangular in shape, with the LIE abutting it to the north and the railroad tracks abutting it to the south, and the subject property abutting it to the west. As such, we were requested to accommodate the possibility of the adjacent site being chosen for the railroad station by providing cross-access between the subject parcel and the adjacent parcel. The only way to accomplish this was to provide a private road from the west property line through to the east property line. And the best alternative, given the town's direction with regard to buffering the southern part of the site, was to utilize the part of the previously mapped and partially constructed roadway and to extend the same to the easterly property line. In that the adjacent site has not been selected, the applicant had to create a cul-de-sac at the end of the road to provide for a turnaround, which is part of the plan. Thus, the design provided herein, in our opinion, is the best design to preserve open space in large blocks. And given the totality of the facts, we believe that this application should be granted. And these blocks of open space will be preserved via a conservation easement. We do have one major issue which we would like to discuss with the commission and have it consider. The site, although not home to the long-eared bat, is a possible breeding ground of the same, and as such is regulated by New York State DEC. The DEC has enacted regulations which reduce the previous window for clearing in such locations from December through May 1st to now being December through February 28th. As Mr. Voorhees will describe in better detail, this leaves the applicant with an extremely short window to effectuate clearing the property parcel for construction to occur. If clearing is not complete by the end of February, no clearing will be able to take place until next winter, thus delaying construction of the site by a minimum of 9 months and up to a year when considering startup times. I will now hand the presentation off to Mr. Voorhees and then do a very brief conclusion after he's done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, everyone. Most of you know me. I'll just make a brief introduction. For the record, my name is Chick Voorhees of Nelson Pope Voorhees. Our offices are in Melville. I'm a certified planner and a certified environmental professional, and I have 44 years of environmental planning experience on Long Island. Tim introduced.
Can we just
the
swear him in?
application.
I'm sorry,
Excuse me,
Chick, can we just
John?
swear you in?
Okay,
Thank you.
Chick, can you please raise your right hand?
It's raised.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you, Chick.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. The applicant, as you know, is AVR SP Brookhaven JV LLC. And Brian Ferrajari of that organization is with us today. Tim made the introduction, and also Jeff Volmuth from Volmuth and Brush is the site engineer. All of these parties are available if there are questions. I will cover the application in great detail, so hopefully that will help the understanding. As was indicated by a number of people, the site is in the compatible growth area. It does include the buildings identified here. I do want to point out that the 100,000 square foot self-storage is a low intensity use. It has low traffic, wastewater, water generation and use. This is a DRS by virtue of the fact that it's over 300,000 square feet. But it is unique because this is part of the Brookhaven R&D Plaza subdivision. And we are reaching the 300,000 square feet by the fact that we've combined 3 of the lots from the original subdivision. So that subdivision was approved in 1982. It's semi-interesting, but Supervisor Romaine and I go back a long time in Brookhaven. This is the first project that I worked on in the town, and I actually assisted with finalizing the review of this subdivision at that time. It's a long time ago. Our application before the commission was submitted on November 3rd, 2021. Both Tim and Julie identified the site location. I think we're all familiar with that. This shows it in an aerial photograph, the 47.26 acres, zoned L1 industrial. This is the context. This is the entire Brookhaven R&D, now known as Brookhaven Technology Center. This is the eastern terminus of it. And all of these are individual lots. If you look at a tax map, all of these would be expected to be built over time. But as you can see, it's been 40 years in the making for a number of these lots. Just in terms of the current review status, as was mentioned, the town planning board has issued a negative declaration. They've also conditioned site plan approval and issued that conditional approval. That was just in December, and a revised approval, as we'll describe a little more and Tim has touched on, was issued last Monday. We do know that there was a violation that's been resolved as of January 6th. Julie made mention that we amended and provided the newest town-approved site plans last Friday. And we did have the opportunity to meet with staff and explain the project and those changes last Thursday. So I thought that was helpful. And that brings us up to the hearing today. As I said, the Brookhaven R&D was approved in 82. Full EIS, also 1982. It's been under development since about 1984. This is also quite interesting. When this went for final approval, the Pine Barrens Commission had not been set up yet, but the Pine Barrens Act, Article 57, had been adopted. So this subdivision was actually reviewed by what was known as the Suffolk County Pine Barrens Review Commission, which was an interim commission. I had processed a few applications in front of that body. And I can tell you that we contacted the planning department. Sarah Lansdale is on, as is Andy Freeling. And I think all will indicate that no decision has been found. Supposedly it was in the records of CEQ, but Andy has not been successful in finding that. And we also foiled it at the commission office, just in case those original records from 93 to 95 were handed off to the commission, and that has not found any records. So, I wish we had it. There's a note on the plan that was approved by the town that makes reference to it, but it does not appear to exist. As I said, the lots are being developed continuously as we go from now forward based on market demand. And because it's in the compatible growth area, various applications, if needed, will either go to the town for conformance with the town's Central Pine Barrens District under Chapter 85, or if needed, go to the commission. This is our application and all of the required elements and the various attachments that I'll refer to that were included with our application. We met with staff, as I said, last Thursday, the 13th, and discussed the changes. This plan is the most recent plan. It is the one that was approved by the planning board. It did improve, not to a major extent, but it did improve open space by tightening up these drive aisles and expanding this area of contiguous open space by about 15 feet. This is the back of building C, as well as the east side of building B. So those plan changes were favorable and in response to the town's request. We believe that this site plan does clarify the limits of clearing, and I'll go into that in more detail when I touch on the standards and guidelines. I can tell you that the existing cleared areas that Julie referred to as the 3.08 acres are the road right-of-way and an excavated recharge area. They are included in the existing cleared areas. And we did include a submission of site erosion control and landscape plans. This is a little larger rendition of the plan showing building A, B, and C. We are connecting to the Brookhaven Sewer District. As Tim indicated, we're reorienting the road and removing this, which basically bifurcated the site and split the site. We do have public water. We will be providing subsurface drainage. We will have covenanted buffers for all of the easement areas. This right-of-way will be abandoned. I'll cover the standards and guidelines. There are a number that staff in their staff report that was issued and available yesterday indicated we conform with. I'll just indicate that this analysis is based on our most up-to-date plans, which were submitted last Friday. A small c indicates that the standard or guideline conditionally conforms per the staff memo. A large C indicates that it does conform or has been found to conform. I indicates, this is an example, additional information was requested. We hope to address all requests for additional information today, and NA is not applicable. So we can go fairly quickly through this page. We are connecting to an STP and therefore conform to Article 6 of the Suffolk County Sanitary Code. We are pursuing all approvals Now that the town has issued the neg deck and the site plan is approved by the town planning board, we'll be continuing and obtaining all health department approvals. The STP discharge was found to conform. That's a large C. Nitrate nitrogen, we performed the same analysis based on the sonar model that we've used for other DRS applications. And we are substantially less than the standard, which we believe does not apply because there are no ponds. And that's how the guideline reads. Articles 7 and 12 are required to be complied with, and that is conditional upon the county's approval. We expect that that will be no issue whatsoever as we move forward through the final stages of that review. We are not impacting public wells or private wells, and both of those have been found to conform in the staff report. And non-disturbance buffers, this pertains to wetlands, and there is one question in the staff report. So additional information was requested. That additional information had to do with a request to discuss the existing recharge basin that was excavated many years ago for that road, which was never completed. That recharge area was checked for wetlands. There are no wetlands. It is not a vernal pool or pond. The area is mostly dry, as you can see in this photograph. Looking north on the west side of that recharge area, there is one small, and I do mean small, wet area, does not exhibit wetland indicator species. And this was based by a visit by ecologists on my staff that occurred in November. This provides a little more context on that particular area. This is a 2001 aerial photograph. It's really the photograph that best shows this after it was cleared, after the subdivision was approved. It does receive water because that was the whole purpose of creating it. You can see what to me looks like standing water in this area, but most of it has been dry and the road was never finished. And that small wet area, we did a GPS screenshot, is roughly in this location. So we have found that it was designed for recharge. It's not completed. It does receive stormwater. There are no wetlands or vernal pool. And based on this additional information, which I will certainly submit for the record, we believe, and I believe staff will find, that we conform with this standard. Moving as quickly as I can through the rest, pertaining to buffers and CNRs. This, again, was semi-redundant, just in asking if that particular feature, the former recharge area, is a wetlands. It is not, as I've explained. And of course, in terms of buffers, very similar and really much to the credit of AVR on the meadows. We're very familiar as a team with conservation easements, recording of CNRs, checking them, snow fencing them, surveying them, and ensuring that they will be respected. So what you see is what you get on the plan. So we believe that based on this additional information, we are completely consistent with standard 4.2 pertaining to buffers and CNRs. The site is not within a wild, scenic, or recreational river corridor. Again, somewhat redundant, but the next several guidelines and standard pertain to that wetlands question. Under 4.4, additional information was requested. We believe we've provided that in testimony today and that we conform. Stormwater recharge, as I've indicated, subsurface drainage will be provided. And the staff report indicates conditioned approval of this particular standard. We have town site plan approval, and that includes the grading and drainage plans. So they've been reviewed by town engineering, found to be suitable and acceptable. And so we believe that we have conformed with that condition. Natural recharge was also conditioned and conforming, provided we meet the condition. And again, we have approved town plans. Next has to do with ponds. Staff report found that to be not applicable. In terms of natural topography and recharge, there are no natural recharge areas available. Staff report found that to be conditioned to be consistent. And as I said, the town approved plans ensure that that condition is complied with. Erosion control under guideline 5.5, there was a full set of erosion control plans that are part of the site plan, planning board approved package. That was also found to be conditioned to be consistent. And so we do meet that. And as I said, we will stake and fence all areas, ensure that the easement areas are respected. The next one is vegetation clearance limits. And the staff report seemed to express some confusion over the calculations. And, it was indicated that this is always requested. What I've shown on the right side of the screen is directly off the site plan that has been provided to staff. It's the updated plan that was submitted last Friday. And it shows the 3 easement areas. Those were noted, as Julie said in her intro. Area A is 9.74. Area B, which is that one to the north that we'll talk about more, is 5.69. And area C is 1.24. And the sum of those areas is 16.67, which is 35.27% of the site. And that is completely consistent with the required natural area. The way the vegetation clearance standard is written, it talks about clearing that's permitted. So 65% of the site is 30.72 acres. 35 is 16.54 acres. Our natural area equals 35.6%, and therefore is consistent and in compliance, because the clearing is less than 65% and the natural area is greater than 35%. So we conform. The 3.08 acres that staff has mentioned has been addressed. It's within areas that are already proposed to be cleared. This is just an additional graphic to demonstrate that. You can see there is a kind of a fuchsia purplish line. This is the limit of clearing. This is the clearing area for building A, for building B, and for building C. And the areas that are indicated as natural are those easement areas that will be preserved in total. So you can see that the road, where it had been cleared, much has been revegetated or may be showing up as canopy on the aerial photograph, is within the clearing area for building C. The recharge area, or that former excavation area, is within the clearing area, which ends here. And north of this line, the limit of clearing, it is naturalized. And in fact, other parts have naturalized as well. So this, again, clearly shows that we've accounted for all of those areas. The natural areas do not include prior cleared areas. The natural areas do not include the islands that have been referred to, or smaller areas. And importantly, based on a discussion at an earlier meeting agenda item, the Brookhaven National Laboratory area, which is really for this part of the site, on the southern part of the site, and you'll see it better at the end of the presentation, is actually subtracted and is not part of our natural area. So the fact that that has been determined as of today, I believe, or will be determined to not count against clearing, that means that we have an additional 0.36 acres that would be considered natural. And that just really serves to increase the natural area and further demonstrate our compliance with vegetation clearance standard 6.1. I do want to clarify, this has come up a few times, there is no additional development proposed for this property. This is it. These 3 sites, these 3 buildings constitute the full extent of development. So that question can be really satisfactorily addressed. So we believe that we're completely consistent with the vegetation clearance, and I believe staff will find that to be the case upon a detailed review of the submission. There was some talk already about unfragmented open space. I just want to say that this became a DRS when these 3 lots were combined. The individual lots, had they been developed with this road bisecting the site, with this recharge area, and use of what would have been the configuration of lots, would have fragmented the open space even more. And I will say that it would be very consistent with the other lots within this subdivision. The original road divided the property. Moving the road to the north allows us to provide greater contiguous open space. And again, there's really no coordinated open space. This site is within the subdivision. This site is within the subdivision. Each of these individual sites will be developed. This is a recharge basin. Would not have the same level of coordinated open space that our plans provide. And we're also removing recharge and using subsurface recharge. And that allows us to, again, provide greater open space and better contiguous open space. One of the questions had to do with looking at turning the building in an attempt to somehow provide additional open space to the east. I can tell you that we looked at that. This is a very quick graphic to show that. And you can see a couple of things here. Number one, we would not be able to provide the roadway to access the site to the east, which Tim described in detail as a landlocked site. I can say that we can't really change the configuration of this building because of its use. The length and width of this building is critical to the function of this type of use, which is consistent with zoning. So it doesn't fit. We did look at it. We looked at a number of things that just do not improve the open space. And our engineer can indicate, and Tim has indicated, that this project provides the best contiguous open space configuration possible for the combination of this 47.26 acres, which is now combined and lets us have these larger contiguous open space areas. I believe you'll find that we are consistent with the intent, and because of the constraints associated with the subdivision, we are improving open space, not further fragmenting it. A couple of final points on that. To the north is the LIE. There is a right-of-way. It's about 125 feet of naturally vegetated area. And I'll go into that more on the roadside design aspect of the standards and guidelines. To the south is the Long Island Railroad. To the east is the landlocked site, and certainly open space will be required on that site, and it will align with this site. And therefore, based on all of these factors, as well as the November 3rd submission, which goes into this in detail, we believe we're consistent with the unfragmented open space requirement under standard 6.2. As we move forward, the fertilizer dependent vegetation has a large C that indicates that staff found it to conform. And in fact, we can fertilize, and I'm certainly not advocating this, but up to 7.09 acres, we're proposing 1.34 acres of fertilized vegetation, which is 2.84%, substantially less than the 15%. And I just want to point that out as a benefit of this type of project. Native plantings is a requirement. We did submit a 3-sheet landscape plan. Staff in their intro indicated that the town would review these plans for conformance, and the town has approved the landscape plan as of last Monday, the final conditional approval. So that's been submitted. It includes all of the species that are identified. Staff requested additional information, but I'm not sure if they looked at the landscape plans. And in fact, the town has reviewed them. So that's a very important clarification. We believe we're consistent with 6.4. In terms of ecological species, there were things in the staff report on page 1. And then, there was some attention to the northern long-eared bat. So I do just want to say for the record that there is a tiger salamander breeding pond in the area, but it is north of the expressway. I apologize for this graphic, but it comes from the DEC Environmental Resource Mapper. This is that breeding pond to the north of the expressway. It's 1,300 feet from the site. The DEC typically looks within 1,000 feet for open space to meet the upland life cycle requirements of the tiger salamander. And so this has no bearing on the project whatsoever. I just want to make sure that's understood. And with respect to the northern long-eared bat, we would be required to observe the December 1st through February 28th clearing window, unless some other DEC authorization is provided for under Article 11. And based on our assessment of habitats on the site, we do not believe that would be forthcoming. There are no other listed species where there's suitable habitat on this site. And so I believe that we are completely consistent and have provided the additional information that's requested in the staff report to demonstrate conformance with standard 7.1 ecological species. Just a few more, thank goodness, but we do want to be thorough and have you understand the full submission. Clearing envelopes is guideline 8.1. There has been reference to 1.85 acres with slopes in excess of 15%. I'm going to go into this in more detail because staff requested more information. But I'll say as an overview that the majority of those areas are man-made, and I'll be able to demonstrate that to you. Additional information was requested with regard to stabilization of the site and erosion control, which is guideline 8.2. And I do want to point out that this guideline does allow development on slopes greater than 10% if it is mitigated. And it even talks about proper engineering design. And I'll just point out that the planning board has approved this, including grading and drainage plans and review by the town engineer. And then slope analysis. These are all three related. So we did submit a slope analysis with the application. I'll be providing some further information on all three of these guidelines. So the slope analysis is shown here. The site is relatively flat. 93% is 0 to 10% slopes. About 2.9% of the site are 10 to 15% slopes. And those are these lighter gray areas that you can see really scattered about the site. The areas that are 15% and greater are the darker areas, and those are really showing up in this area. So let's just understand this road was cleared and this recharge area was created. These are mounds. These areas of 15% greater slopes and some greater than 10% are basically mounds that were left to remain when this road was created. This recharge area was excavated. It's man-made. You saw the aerial photograph of it before from 2001. Those are areas of slopes 15% or greater. And there are more intermittent, but some slopes along the Long Island Railroad that were created when the embankment was made for the LIRR. So we shouldn't get too excited about the 1.85 acres because the majority of it, if not all of it, is within areas that are man-made. And the rest are really, you can see the light green is 0 to 10%. The majority of the site is 0 to 10%. The table of all of those slope areas is in the lower right of this image. And there are just scattered areas greater than 10%, most of which are man-made. So staff did request an overlay. I think this is helpful for all three of these guidelines, 8.1, 2, and 3. And this shows that same line that was a fuchsia line before which is an overlay on the slope map. So basically, this is the area for clearing for building A, building B, and building C. The excavated area is man-made, and it's within the existing proposed clearing areas. The Long Island Railroad embankment is mostly in preserved areas. These mounds that are not natural, they're man-made from when the road was created, are within areas that are going to be disturbed for building C, but they're not man-made slopes. And when you look at it, there are really only a few scattered areas outside of the 3 areas for building development where there is some minor disturbance of scattered natural slopes greater than 10%. It would be impossible to avoid those areas and still provide the contiguous open space. So there's a little bit of an inherent conflict between those standards and guidelines, but we believe that this is the most efficient design and development for the site. It avoids the natural steep slope areas to the maximum extent. And I do want to point out, we do have one retaining wall that I'll go into because there's a guideline that deals with that. It's at the south part of the building A area. The guidelines don't prohibit retaining walls, but there is a staff comment that does talk about something to that effect. Nor do the guidelines prohibit disturbance in steep slope areas. And they specifically provide language under guideline 8.2 that slopes greater than 10% and disturbance therein may be approved, and it's subject to technical review, design, and mitigation. And so the fact that the town of Brookhaven has already reviewed the design, the grading and drainage, the retaining wall, the landscape plan, and issued their approval, as well as the erosion control plans, would indicate that we meet guidelines 8.1, 2, and 3 with respect to slopes and each of the factors under those particular guidelines. So this is the additional information that's been requested by staff. I believe it clearly demonstrates that we are in conformance with those guidelines. Getting very close to the end. As I said, 8.4, it's a little bit redundant. Additional information was requested, but we have provided the erosion control plan approved by the town of Brookhaven. Roads have been placed to ensure proper design and access. Additional information was requested. It's again related to guidelines 8.1, 2, and 3. And here's the one about retaining walls. This is interesting because the staff report does pick up on a retaining wall. It says that some cut of material is needed. That retaining wall is right here. And there's one other on building C. And it basically facilitates ramp access to the building, but it's all within existing disturbed areas that are part of our allowable clearing. The only other retaining wall, other than these retaining walls for the ramps, is a retaining wall right here at the southeast side, as I said before, that provides for a grade transition and allows us to preserve contiguous open space to the south of that area. So again, the walls are not prohibited. They're part of the mitigation. They've been approved by the town of Brookhaven. Additional information was requested on these 3 items. I believe we have provided that, and I believe you'll find that we are completely consistent. These will go relatively quickly in terms of open space dedication. There will be easements to the commission. We've identified those easement areas. The total of those 3 A, B, and C easement areas is 16.67, which is greater than the 35%. Same as what's been done for the Meadows with AVR. You know the group, and you'll be dealing with them after approval as this goes forward. Additional information was requested. We've provided that. Clustering really is somewhat redundant with unfragmented open space. As I've demonstrated, by combining the lots, we provide improved clustering as compared to individual fragmented development of 3 individual lots. Protection of that dedicated open space, same thing. Those areas will be staked and fenced, and we will absolutely be in complete conformity. This is not an agricultural or horticultural use. The staff report indicated not applicable. Cultural resources, I'm going to go into each of these in a little bit more detail because they're really summed up in 11.4 roadside design. And there's already been quite a bit of discussion. But additional information was requested with respect to setbacks, the railroad, LIE, the South Service Road. And Tim went into pretty good detail about how the town looks at this under Chapter 85 with respect to the railroad, the roadside buffers, are all arterial buffer requirements in town code. And the town has approved this. So we will be protecting buffered open space from the Long Island Expressway and the service road. We will have large open space conservation easements. In particular, that's easement B, which is 5.7 acres. The industrial site views will be protected and the character will be the same as other developments within this subdivision that was approved in the 80s. And the final standard just has to do with warehouse and storage uses and compliance with articles of the Suffolk County Sanitary Code. And that had a large C, so staff report indicated that we are consistent. So just the final few slides have to do with roadside design. This gives you a little bit more information to give you a comfort level that we're completely consistent here. First of all, the setback from the LIE of natural vegetation is about 48 feet. The building itself, the yellow, is 111.4 feet from the property line. The parking is 66.8 feet from the property line. And this large conservation easement will be preserved in total. It's about 800 feet long. And what I want to say is, and you can see the image at the top provides the entire stretch of buildings and lots along the expressway. This will be the largest natural, undisturbed open space segment of this subdivision along the LIE and the South Service Road. And I think that's a really important factor that indicates that in terms of roadside design and contiguous open space, we've addressed that completely within the proposed design of this site. The building character is similar. This is one of the smaller buildings, and it is nearest to the expressway and the service road. However, again, this is a very limited part, and it's no different than this row, which will become buildings. There's two already constructed here, one constructed here, and you can see the nature of these individual lots as part of the approved subdivision. This is why combining our three lots allows us to create greater unfragmented open space. I do want to point out, I did a blow up, which shows this is just the LIE right-of-way. And when you measure this, it's 125 feet of natural vegetation between the travel lane pavement of the South Service Road or the expressway main line and the subject site. So this will all remain as natural vegetation, plus close to 50 feet within the property, plus 800 feet of natural open space all along the expressway. So again, we have improved the open space through design and combining the lots. There were questions about signage. The town includes that in their site plan review. There are signage details. Those have been approved by the town of Brookhaven. Visibility will be limited. There's really no need for signage to be visible from the expressway. And there was a comment about providing trails. Nothing of that type has been required on this site or any of the other sites. I've traveled the roads you can walk through that area. And again, there's no need to really get into that. The town has approved the site plans. So this roadside design image indicates that we are completely consistent with these particular guidelines, 11.1 through 4, that cover cultural resources, scenic and recreational, and roadside design. Additional information was requested by staff. We've provided that information, and I believe you will find that we're completely consistent. I just want to say for the record that this is the town-approved site plan. It's the overall site layout plan from the Volmuth and Brush site plan package that was approved by the town, and we propose this plan for your action. Just in closing, we've demonstrated complete conformance with all of the standards and guidelines. As you've heard many times, this center is a continuing industrial development site that conforms to the L1 zoning of the town. The project provides improved open space compared to individual site plans. Of course, the project will provide jobs and it meets a need for the zoned use. That's not one of your criteria, but it is certainly important to the municipality. I want to say for the record that I will submit this PowerPoint presentation as a PDF right after this meeting. And we will provide a link to copies of all of the town approved site plans. And we know that the intent of the comprehensive land use plan is to protect the Pine Barrens, you know, all of the parties that were involved in that. And I experienced that at the time of creation of the land use plan, as well as Article 57. Conformance equals protection of the Pine Barrens. We all signed on to that. So we do conform, and approval of this plan is requested based on the testimony by Tim and myself today. And the team is here to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chick. Tim, you said you had some concluding remarks? You have to.
Muted, Tim.
Muted.
You're still muted.
Hold on. There I am. Okay,
Got it.
sorry about that. Yes, it's more of a request than anything else. As Chick has testified and as brought up by me in my presentation, the one overriding issue that we have here is the clearing window to meet the DEC regulations with regard to the long-eared bat, which expire on February 28th. And it leaves us a very small window in which to do any tree clearing on this site. Based on those regulations, we're asking that the commission, after providing the written comment period, we'd ask that the written comment period mirror that of the prior application and expire on January 28th at noon. And that we would ask that the commission consider holding a special meeting the following week to consider this application so that we may, if the commission was so inclined to grant the application, be able to effectuate our clearing this year rather than face a 9-month to a 12-month delay in doing any construction activity on the site. And we appreciate the board's consideration. We appreciate the fact that the staff was very good in meeting with us and discussing these matters, and they were very accessible to us. And that's really the end of our presentation. We're here to answer any questions that may arise. Thank you very much.
Does anyone from the commission have any questions for the applicants?
Sheehan.
Just going to make a comment that we also, in an unrelated project having to do with breaking ground for the new STP at Calabro for the Mastic sewer treatment plant, have to get it in before the long-eared bat precludes that. And we have just been thrown another wrench into the process by the provisos coming out of HUD. So we are certainly empathetic with that particular consideration.
Does anyone else on the commission have any questions for the applicants?
No, I'll just make a quick comment. I agree with Dorian. Obviously, this is a deadline. It's a major project, a major economic boost for the area. in terms of creating jobs. Could I ask Tim, how many jobs do you expect to be created out of this project?
Well, there'll be hundreds of construction jobs created in order to construct this site. And we would anticipate well over 100 jobs to be created on the site for permanent jobs.
Permanent jobs.
If there's no one else from the commission, can we open to, if there's anyone from the public that wish to comment? Angie, could you please unmute Dick Gamper?
He's unmuted. He can
Unmuted.
speak.
Go ahead, Dick.
I can proceed.
Yes, please.
I'm very uncomfortable about this, but I will be also very brief. There seems to be a lot of back talk. No, that's gone. That's good. The Pine Barrens Society has had a great relationship with AVR Realty for almost 40 years. This seems way, way over anything that we've been asked to accept, especially under the circumstances. We need to talk to them and to those who are involved in this project, including this unbelievably long expose. This is clearly a challenge. Commissioner Supervisor Ed Romaine, could you just do us a favor of looking at some of the things that may not have emerged or may not have been clear to you? We're not trying to hurt the economy of Brookhaven or anything, but there are problems that they have not really covered at this point, and we want to get it right. I want to say that the Pine Barrens Commission needs to take this and take it seriously. There are a lot of difficulties, a lot of problems that have emerged that we have not seen successful results to. They are clearly trying to do what's right and cover all of the things that a complicated project are going to produce. But this is a big one. This is the one that they've gone back to time and time again. They haven't resolved the matter. They have not satisfied, I don't think, permanently the town of Brookhaven. I think the commission is showing an astuteness in terms of looking at all that needs to be looked at. That's what the commission should be doing. That's not the role of some access group that is trying to change things without regard to the importance of this. This is a big project. It is having an impact on Brookhaven and on Long Island. And we will take the time and we'll do it immediately. We won't delay because the interaction with AVR was something that sort of threw us a curve. And then when I looked at what the commission was doing, and Ed Romaine, I've never seen you not look fairly and squarely at what's good for the town of Brookhaven. But this is a big one. They're having a problem with it. And the problem they're having is they are telling you the truth in most cases about what's the problem here, but they're not coming forward with a solution. And it's a big problem and a bad contribution to history if we don't get it right. We will stay up at night. We will do whatever we need to do. We'd like to meet with you, Supervisor Romaine. We'd like to talk to somebody at the commission to say, let's be sure we've got this right, because the evidence up to this point is we sure as hell haven't.
Dick, can I make a suggestion? Number one, you're always welcome to meet with me, as you know. Let me make a second suggestion that I'm going to ask Emily Pines, who's very fair, and I think you know Emily, and is my representative. Emily, love to burden you with this. But
You're both very fair. Thank you.
Yeah, but Emily will contact you, give you her number where you can speak with her. And the other person I'm going to ask to take a look at this is not our new planning commissioner, but our former planning commissioner, Beth Riley, who I think you also know, who is a very competent and capable person. And since she dealt with most of this before she left and returned to the town attorney's office, I'm going to ask her to reach out to you as well. And then if you'd like to meet with me, certainly we'll have our planning staff available, and I'm happy to set up a meeting with you. You know my telephone number.
Yep.
You know I'm available, but Emily,
Yes.
if you could just contact Dick with some contact information, so
Sure.
he, either by email or by phone, he can express some of the concerns he has that he'd like to see checked out. And I will, and if you could ask Beth to do the same, and Annette Aderesto as well. I think you know all of these young ladies, and you don't
And it's
mind if I call you young.
Thank you.
But
it's-
if you could check with them, and then if you want to meet, I'm happy to meet anytime.
I appreciate it. I also would like the opportunity to make sure that what we are concerned about, in fact, mirrors the concerns that the members of this commission are doing a first-rate job. And in this particular case, they're raising questions that need to be asked. We want the answers to the question. If everything gets resolved, that's fine. But it's looking like something that's been there for a long time that has not been entirely visible, where the information being supplied was not consistent with what would be needed. So let's not rush to judgment. Let's give it, we still have a chance to get it right. And that will involve the commission, it will involve the towns, it will involve the people who are applying for this project. But you listen to a very, very long explanation as to what should happen someplace. And it's not entirely clear to us that that has been justified in any way, shape, or form. Let's look at it. If we're missing something, you'll straighten us out. You've done it before. But I am telling you that I listened to the presentations. I've read the articles that appeared in the paper or elsewhere, and I just want to get this right. This is very big and potentially problematic. It's been years in the making, and we got to, if we're going to get it out, if we're going to make a decision, then let's get it right. That's all we're asking.
Dick, can I make one other suggestion to you?
Yes, sir.
You know Brian Ferrajari.
I do. And I was disappointed that we had to reach out to him with a special initiative because it wasn't being clearly represented. And we think that that's part of how this problem got occurred. But the solution to that would be to fix it. Let's find out, can this be fixed?
Yeah.
If so, how so? Because I don't think that you are in any way, shape, or form are getting up in the morning to see if you can do something that isn't good for the environment. That's not who you are. But the staff at the commission, I think if the staff at the town needs to take a new look, a hard look, and say, do we have this right? How many times has the applicant come back and said, okay, then we'll change this because the staff required it? Let's get this right. That's all we're asking.
So I'm going to make two suggestions to you. One is to contact the town personnel myself.
Thank you.
And the people that I've asked, Emily and Beth, will reach out to you. And if you wish, Annette. The second thing is you have Tim Shea and Chick Flores. I would suggest that you reach out to them and Brian Ferrajari, possibly by a Zoom meeting or telephone.
Yeah, I wish we'd had that earlier, but
and
it's never too late to get in and look at it again.
what outstanding questions you have, you raise with them. And the only thing that's happening today is this hearing is going to be closed, be left open until the 28th of January. And we'll go from there if anything else is going to happen based on your meetings. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And I think that's what you're going to get. I think that the commission will analyze this in a fair and objective way. I think the town of Brookhaven will say, yeah, I think Mr. Romaine's agenda was a good one, but maybe he did not see this way because he's always been open-minded and all we're trying to do is get it right. And the length of the read does not define the rightness of the conclusion. So let's get that part.
And I would echo your comments about AVR. We've always had a positive relationship with the developer, and he's always been fair and open with us. And
we'll get over it.
Right. So with that, I'm going to make a motion, unless there's other public speakers. I'm going to make a motion to close this public hearing and leave it open for public comment until January 28th at noon.
County seconds that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The motion
Well,
carries.
Emily will contact you.
Thank you very, very
Dan,
much.
Dan, you're not
Appreciate it.
opposed, right?
Say again?
Town of Riverhead was just late on the hand, right?
Okay.
John, Riverhead supporting closing the hearing.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Your hand was
Yeah, it was a little.
It was late.
slow draw
yes,
today.
Yes.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
So that concludes the hearing. Thank you, Dominica.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Day.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Judy, do we have any further business?
There is no further business to
Make a
be.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
The next scheduled meeting is February 16th.
There can be a special meeting called. I had heard that request if things get worked out. Is that correct? Not only for Brookhaven R&D, but also for Quogue Wildlife. So they can do what they have to do.
Just before we close, just because the agenda listed a second public comment period,
Oh, I'm sorry.
should we just make sure that there's,
Absolutely right. I apologize.
Okay.
Yes, is there anyone else that wants to provide public comment at this point in terms of the last comment period? Is there anyone on, well, we had no phone-ins, we had no emails.
There's one
nope.
phone in, but they're
They're
gone.
gone.
They're gone. Okay, so there is no
Excellent.
additional public comment at this time.
all right, thank you.
Is there,
And there's nothing for closed advisory either, correct?
right, there is no closed advisory.
Excellent.
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Allow
Aye.
somebody.
I'm sure we'll be talking on some of these things.
Take care, everybody.
Anybody, any
Good night.
opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Bye-bye. See you all
Bye-bye.
soon.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye.